Hey guys, this is Tashina from Logical Harmony, and today I'm going to talk to you about the ELF Illuminating Palette and the Hourglass Ambient Lighting Palette. A lot of you have been asking me about these since I got the ELF palette, how they compare, what the difference is. Really, they're both amazing, but they're very, very different from one another. So I wanted to make a video to show you guys swatches of them so you could see what the shades are like and just kind of talk to you about how I use each one because I don't use them the same. The first one that I'm going to talk about is the ELF Illuminating Palette. This came out very, very recently, just like all ELF products, it's cruelty-free and all of their cosmetics are vegan. And it's this handy palette with a mirror and 4 different shades. So in the product description, it does sound the same as the Hourglass palette. It's meant to help blur imperfections on your skin, radiate light, things like that. And it does work for that, but I find that these are actually closer to a highlight than an all-over face powder. I wouldn't use any of these all over my face, but I do really, really like them to highlight different areas. And it's not as strong as a real highlight. So it's not as bright and bold as Opal by Becca, which you guys know is my hands down favorite highlighter. They're very, very, very pretty. So I often use them on days where I want a subtle highlight or just, to bring out different features in a different way. I'm gonna go ahead and swatch them. I'm going to use my fingers for that so you guys can really see the colors because I do think that that's important with these to see not only the color, but the finish that they are. While there are 4 colors, they're not labeled and they're not sold individually, at least not at this time. So you just have to buy the set and you get all 4. Like their other pans, you can pop them out if you want to make a custom palette. And I think that's pretty cool too. So I'm going to swatch them starting with this lightest one and then move to the pinkish tone, this one, and then this guy over here, the bronzer. So this lightest shade is probably my favorite for if I want to really brighten the under eye area. It's not too shimmery. It's not too pigmented. It's a little bit yellow tone to help, brighten that up. It's pretty. It's more pigmented than any of the Hourglass ones. This next one is a pink toned, and I find that it's really pretty to use in place of a traditional highlighter or to layer underneath it if you want it to be a little bit brighter. It's just very, very pink. It's very light, and it is very, I don't want to say shimmery, but it is more, it's probably the more shimmery one in here, if that makes sense. This next one is a nude, and this is one that I use quite often, actually. I like to use this as kind of like a base for my highlight. Sometimes I use it under my eyes. I'll blend these two and put them underneath my eyes. If you guys can see that right there. It's not very shimmery at all. It's very, very subtle. And I think out of all the shades in this, this would probably be the closest match to anything in the Hourglass palette, just because it's not shimmery, but it does kind of just smooth things out. As you guys can see, as it's melting into my skin, it is looking smoother. I feel like my skin is just looking a little more flawless. But I think that this is still a little bit too shimmery to use as an all-over face powder unless you want to look very glowy and very dewy. This last one is their bronze shade, and this is a very peachy bronze. I use this, sometimes to highlight on my cheekbones in place of blush or to just have a different tone there. I don't really use it for much else other than that, but I think it would depend on your complexion. I think if you have darker skin, this would be an amazing highlight shade. ELF also says that you can use these on your eyes as eyeshadows, which I have done, and it creates a very, very pretty and very natural look. So that is a peek at the ELF Illuminating Palette. Again, I think this is a great palette. It's very, very affordable. The shades are all really pretty and really versatile. I think anyone should have this in their collection, especially if you are someone that's looking for budget-friendly vegan cosmetics. You really, really cannot go wrong with this palette. The next one that I'm going to compare it to is the Hourglass Ambient Light Palette. You guys know this is something that I use all the time. I absolutely love this palette. I recently hit pan on one of the shades. And this contains 3 different shades, so dim light, incandescent light, and radiant light. And dim light and radiant light can be bought separate from this palette. Hourglass makes several shades of these that are vegan. They come in pretty large powder palettes, but incandescent light is exclusive to this set. And these are really meant to soften your skin. They're meant to radiate light out. It's basically described the same way as the ELF palette, but this has been around forever. And I find that the finishes of the powders are very different than the ELF. So I'm going to go ahead and swatch them. I'm going to start with dim light and move over to radiant light. So I'm swatching dim light right there so you guys can kind of see them all together. It is a very, very neutral shade, I would say that it is not really shimmery at all. I use this one as an all-over face powder quite often because it really does create the look of totally poreless, flawless skin. Especially in photos or anything where you are going to have a lot of light on you. This does an amazing job of reflecting the light back out and making your skin just look smooth and flawless, but not dewy and not glowy. I find that the similar shade in the ELF palette looks a lot more dewy and glowy. This next shade is Incandescent Light, and I use this as a flat out highlight. Again, it's not super shimmery the way that a traditional highlight would be. It really is very glowy and very bright. So if you're someone that wants a natural highlight, this is a great option. It's also good layered under. I actually often mix these two, so dim light and incandescent light, and set my under eyes with that because it's so brightening and just makes the skin look totally like poreless and flawless and a little bit glowy. It's just great for that, and that is Incandescent Light there. And the next one is a Radiant Light, and this is a more bronzy shade, a little more gold. So Radiant Light is right there, and as you'll notice, here's the one in the ELF palette and here's Radiant Light. So the one in the ELF palette is a lot more peachy, I guess you could say. I feel like it's more gold, it's more peachy, it has more pigment, but the tone of it is very different. In general, all of the ELF powders do have a little more shimmer to them or a little more radiance, so it really depends on what kind of look you're wanting to get, whether or not you go with the Hourglass or the ELF palette. I personally think everyone should have both. I find that they are different enough that if this is a type of powdering that you're into, if you're into the ambient lighting powders, that it is worth having the two. The ambient lighting powder from Hourglass, the ambient lighting palette, I can't talk. Now there's a frickin' ambulance. The ambient lighting palette from Hourglass is more on the pricey side, but the powders last a very long time. I think I've had this one for over a year and I just hit pan on the shade that I use most. So that tells you a lot right there. The ELF palettes, again, I do feel that a little bit goes a long way and it's very affordable. So I think it is worth buying both, especially if you're curious how they compare and contrast, because I think the way that everyone uses these powders is going to be slightly different. I also think it's worth picking up both for that reason. Shades that I use under my eyes might be great as a highlight for you, or they might be really great as an overall setting powder. You know, we're all going to have our different preference, but I think if you're someone that wants something that's very natural looking and just makes your skin look flawless and gorgeous and glowing, I would go with the Hourglass palette. If you're someone that likes a little more dewy look in your skin, I would pick up the ELF palette. So I think this is a great option too for those with dry skin that want to add more radiance into their skin. I think that's something that we struggle with, us dry skin girls. So these are the swatches of both palettes. Again, I would suggest getting both. Both palettes are cruelty-free, both palettes are vegan. You really can't go wrong, but they are very different from one another. The differences are subtle, but once you get them in person, you'll notice immediately, especially as you start to use them in your routine. I find I just use the powders for very different things or very different looks. That's probably a better way to describe it. So I hope this makes sense to you guys. If you have any other questions about either palette, let me know in the comments down below and I'll make sure that I answer them. And if you guys have tried both of them, I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. You know, what shades in them are your favorite? What are you using them for? Just let me know. I always love to hear how you guys are using the same products that I do. For more updates on cruelty-free vegan beauty and lifestyle, make sure you subscribe to logicalharmony.net. You can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Logical Harmony. Have a good day.